Just as you make your way back to your seats, could I ask maybe if you could have one ear listening to the front and as you walk back so that we can move on with our agenda for today. Thank you. I'd like to introduce to you Lina. Lina is the newly appointed Director for Baptist Women of New South Wales and ACT, Women to Women. Women to Women is one of the affiliated ministries of our movement, and so I thought it'd be great for us to have an opportunity to say hi to you, Lina, and to hear from you, what you're looking forward to in your role and what that role will look like.
Well, thanks, Steve. It's a real privilege to be here. Hello, my name is Lina Hahn. I'm the Missions and Community Ministry Leader at Hawkesbury Valley Baptist Church. I'm not originally Australian. You may be shocked to find that out, but it's true. I married a Queenslander who's also an Australian, and believe it or not. So we've been married for 10 years. We were each in parachurch missions for a long time, and then God gave us each other for a new season in our life, so we're very grateful for that. And as the newly and recently appointed Director of Women to Women, or Baptist Women New South Wales ACT, there's a lot of words in that role. I'm thrilled to be in this opportunity, which is what I'm seeing it as. I really believe that the Lord is going to extend our tents in this area, and that we will continue in our vision and our focus to connect the women, to connect Baptist women as a body, encouraging, equipping, and empowering us to lift up the name of Jesus Christ through words and deeds across our movement. And that's the vision that I have.
Great. Thanks, Lina. Lovely to meet you. You might like to grab Lina and chat with her about that afterwards. I'm going to hand over back to Jamie as chair for the next part of our agenda.
Well, just briefly, because I'm handing over to Jenny, Lynn Scott. Sorry, I'm handing over to Lynn Scott to talk about the accreditation of Mark. Where's Lynn? Here she is.
Today, first of all, my name is Lynn Scott. I come from Ryde Baptist Church, and I am the Secretary of the Committee for the Ministry. In the absence today of Tony Kalman, who's the chair of the Committee for the Ministry, enjoying himself in New Zealand at the moment, I'm to bring a motion to the Assembly. We have been asked to actually have a different format today, a particular behaviour from us to suit the needs of one particular man who has been called to overseas mission. He has been somebody who has trained and studied in Australia, though being originally from Vietnam, and he has been called to mission work. He has been accepted as an accreditation candidate previously, but normally he would not have been accredited until this time next year. But he is intending to return and to begin his work in mission, but he is not currently an Australian citizen, and he's got all sorts of visa issues, plus the desire not to waste money by travelling to and from Australia several times over the next 12 months before he's been accredited. And so we are asking today that you approve for accreditation today a man that we can only call Mark P, for obvious reasons. And the Committee for the Ministry is bringing this motion to Assembly now, that the Assembly welcome Mark P and that he be approved to proceed to accreditation later today. And after being set apart for ministry, his name be added to the list of accredited ministers on the recommendation of the Committee for Ministry. So we're asking that we approve that he actually be accredited today, not waiting until next September as would be the normal process. But we unanimously bring this to you.
So from the Committee for Ministry and from the Assembly Council, do you understand what's kind of going on here? We're setting this man apart, and there's reasons why we're not using his full name for all the mission stuff. Lynn's moving that on behalf of the Committee for Ministry. Will second that? Thank you. Okay. Any questions? You've got a little blue sheet. Let's use them today, hey? Be disappointed if you didn't use your... Oh, you got a yellow one. Is there any difference between the blue and the yellow one? If you got a blue one, you get 2 votes. No, that's not true. That's not right. Someone did tell me they had 2. You only get 1 vote. It's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Thank you. Any against? The motion is carried. We mentioned earlier today that there's been ongoing discussion again about an affiliation fee and proposal, and Steve is going to speak to that. It's on page 16 of your notes.
Thanks, Jamie. This is more by way of an update, which was not what was originally intended for today for this matter, but for the reasons that I think we've already outlined in the Assembly Guide. We are also leaving this on the table for the moment. Those of you who mightn't have connected with our May Assembly, we brought a proposal to the May Assembly, building on discussions from a couple of prior assemblies to that, to move from our affiliated churches expressing financial partnership with the wider movement, moving that from an aspirational goal of 5% of general income, which it has been since that was affirmed by Assembly in, almost 10 years ago now, 9 years ago, to it being a target to move towards and in the form of an affiliation fee. That came out of the strong encouragement of Assembly at the beginning of, or the first Assembly in 2018, to, as part of our wider talk around affiliation, to raise this issue and to discuss the best way forward. We've talked, and so I won't sort of rehearse all of that discussion, but in terms of the big why of it, I guess the less than sustainable nature of the current levels of capacity that we have that really haven't changed in terms of the sum total of giving from the churches of our movement since the 1990s, and are therefore now in real terms very significantly less than they once were. Of course, over that time, the number of our churches have increased, and so effectively we've sort of seen this disparity that has grown over time. It's a bit like being part of a church that continues to grow for 25 years, but the offerings go down. Well, that's in macro picture what's happened for us. So what do we do about that? And so that's what we're wrestling with. We also talked about the how we might deal with that, and the proposal that came in May was essentially a staged and relational approach to phase in over time a process whereby churches would commit to a 5% affiliation fee. And that was a process that we said there's going to be lots of sort of little steps along the way rather than there being an expectation that churches that aren't there might go there straight away, and with clear carve-out provisions for hardship for churches that, for whatever reason, have an inability to start to progress and increase. And of course, probably the most significant one of those at the moment is the churches that are drought affected across our state. At May Assembly, we had a discussion around that. We particularly had discussion in small groups, you'll recall if you were here, around, I guess, what happens if after all of that relational engagement takes place, a church is not willing to engage with that goal. And a number of different outcomes of that were talked about and brainstormed in the groups. And the feedback that came back through the groups, firstly, was the most significant piece was to affirm the importance of a relational and staged approach, and that this should not be something that's rushed, and that was affirmed as really important. And it was also, of course, acknowledged that the hardest part of this process is what, of course, should be what should the consequences be for churches that choose not to engage at all. And the feedback from discussion at May Assembly and the groups about that was relatively mixed. So we also acknowledged that for some, it was talking about 4 of the 30 groups that, as has been mentioned earlier today, the desire to move on this particular part of our affiliation discussion without and other parts of our affiliation discussion being talked about was difficult. The intention was to bring a fuller and more final proposal for this today to this assembly, but however, in the light of the notices of motion that were received and the process that we're embarking on now, Assembly Council has decided to pause that process while we undertake the process that we talked about before morning tea, and then we'll come back to that. But we do want to just bring you very briefly, on behalf of ACO, I'm bringing you a bit of refined thinking that's come out of the discussions we had at Assembly and engagement since then. First of all, we want to make really, really clear that this process of engaging with churches around this is something that is paramount. And part of that is getting questions answered and good information, and how might this work and how this work in my church and what might be required of us, and is that equitable, and all those sorts of things. So we've tried to take all of those themes or those questions that have been raised over the last few months, and that's formed the basis of the frequently asked questions document that you'll see is part of your affiliation guide. We trust that gathers up some of the main themes of questions that people have had. But again, please feel free to come and talk to Assembly Council members or myself over any of this if you'd like to. So that's the first thing. The second thing was that Assembly Council wants to just put on the table that it feels that the possible consequences of either loss of insurance or in the end, at the end result, disaffiliation is something that they don't want to at this time proceed with. So there will be the revised sort of way forward that's before you, that's really going to get laid on the table now for a while, is that for churches that just don't want to engage at all with an extensive relational process, that there might be loss of voting privileges at Assembly. There might be the need to pay for certain services rather than them just coming as part of what it means to contribute to the life of the movement. But that removal of insurance or removal of affiliation are not on the table. That's where that process is currently up to. And so it's pretty much summarised for you in the documents that's in your Assembly guide. There's going to be further opportunities to feedback, perhaps after we've completed the process that we spoke about before, more morning tea. And so if you've got stuff you'd like to talk through further at this stage, please feel free to come and talk to us about that.
All makes sense. So it's in there and it's on the table for the moment. Any questions? Up the back.
can talk more softly now. Is there a possibility of having a list of those churches and what their affiliations fees should be made available so wealthier churches in a better situation can actually give them a generous, pay their fees for them?
The idea of partnership between churches financially is an excellent one, and I'd be very happy to take that on board. And if there are churches who have capacity, who'd like to be involved in that, please come and talk to one of the council members. But thanks, Alan, that's a great suggestion. Yep.
Any other questions on that? Yeah.
Thanks. I'm just a bit perplexed. It seems the approach around affiliation is for the beliefs and values, and the financial contribution you're talking about is different. It seems that what you're proposing is you can hold to the beliefs and values but not pay it and then still be affiliated. But the opposite doesn't hold true. If you don't hold to the beliefs and values but you still pay, can it be consistent?
Yeah, sure. So I guess probably we're trying to approach this from a process point of view. We think trying to nail down, we accept that trying to nail down the way forward with affiliation fees concurrently with these other discussions that we're having is just going to be too much to try and do at once. And so we will, of course, need to look at the outcome of the discussion around affiliation that we're about to embark on, and that we will make decisions about, next year. And all we're saying is this is what we're laying on the table with what we know at the moment that's come out of the feedback that we've had at the moment and the reflection that's come from that. If there's further reflection that comes out of the results of this process that we're embarking on now and the decisions that we make in June next year, obviously that'll need to be part of how we finally then think around the affiliation fee proposal, if that makes sense. Yep. So it's an iterative thing, I guess is what we're saying. Yep.
Okay. On a positive note, not that Steve, that's positive enough, but Morling College development, there's exciting things happening there. And just to update us, Ian Gray and Ross Clifford are coming. Let's welcome the guys from...
Thanks, Jamie. Good afternoon, everyone. When is the May Assembly? Yeah, but what date? Steve, what date is it? The 2nd of May. The reason I'm asking is that Ian is going on holidays in May, and the assembly is when we will probably open the new building. So we've got to make sure he's able to be there. And many of you would know Ian. He's been at a number of assemblies. He's our property consultant, and he's been part of this for over 10 years, attending assemblies at Windsor. He's probably been to more assemblies than many people in this room, actually, attending assemblies and assisting us and advising us as we take the steps forward. You'll remember that we as a denomination over 12 years ago decided that we would resource the Morling site for the purposes of theological education, enhancing theological education, building a residential college that served the community and our churches, and Morling College as well. And we'd also develop new property that we could use, and as the Assembly went on to decide, co-location of Baptist Financial Services in the Ministry Centre. Now that last stage of that dream is almost coming to fruition. So we've got two videos to show you. The first one you should have or your church has. If it doesn't have it, then let us know. And if you haven't seen it in your church, then please ask your leaders to show it. And then the second one is just to bring you up to date visually about what's happening.
Morling is at a very exciting stage. It's extraordinary how God has blessed us, and we're about to move into new premises. We've built a new residential college, and we're putting funds in the Morling Foundation to ensure that we can continue to train and equip students to impact our world, impact our communities. This is a God-given moment.
I think the future of Morling College is a bright one. As a movement, our heritage and our vision has always been about advancing the gospel of Christ. We are where we are now because people have sought the Spirit of God for how He was leading us.
So we are standing on the shoulders of giants. Over 50 years ago, our churches decided to relocate under God's wisdom out here to Macquarie Park. In 2006 and 2008, our assembly, the gathering of our churches, grabbed hold of the vision. Stage one was the development of units and apartments on part of the land, and that allowed us to build the residential college, which produces income for training and equipping students. The next step is the opening of the Ministry and Learning Centre, a brand new 4-storey building that will have a new library. It has new seminar rooms, new classrooms, and a new auditorium that will take 600 people gathering together. This will be a one-stop shop for our churches, our association, as we minister together.
This vision is not a new vision. It's an extension of the vision of those who've gone before us in previous generations. The new Ministry and Learning Centre that we're seeing come to life now is an opportunity. It's a God-given opportunity for new levels of collaboration between different parts of our movement.
As a student body, to have enhanced opportunities to learn in different ways, to collaborate, to relax as a community, as well as the opportunity to partner with the Baptist Association. To have those opportunities, I think, will just give us a sense of excitement about what God is doing.
The exciting thing for me is to see graduates who, and I mentor many of them, who go out into the churches, and almost all of their churches are growing, and that's the exciting thing.
This building symbolises that God's hand is upon us. His hand is upon us with respect to student growth. His hand is upon us with respect to resourcing. His hand is upon us in the way that we are able now to minister globally, locally. We are able to deliver the finest theological education practically, and it's an extraordinary completion of a vision that was given to us as churches over 50 years ago.
Greetings from the project team at Morling involved with the delivery of this, and it's lovely to be with you again. As Ross said, I've been coming to these gatherings, I think it's since 2006, and like all of us, haven't aged a bit over that period of time. But that gives me great joy to be able to share that presentation that you've seen on the screen with you today. I could write a book about every single image that you saw of every element of that building, because there's been so much thought and prayer and consideration given to a whole range of things in the Ministry and Learning Centre that I'm just privileged to be able to let you see that today. So thank you for the chance to be able to speak just for a few minutes. The Ministry and Learning Centre is just about complete, and that is a point of immense celebration because it did start many, many years ago. And as Ross said in the first video, 57 odd years ago, the move to Macquarie Park established the opportunity that we are delivering on right at this moment on the college campus. The connection with the community, the transformation of the role of Morling and the denomination is integral to what is happening in Macquarie Park at the moment. And we are on that particular journey with that community at the moment. The Ministry and Learning Centre will be complete and be ready for occupation in early October. The Baptist Ministry Centre and Baptist Financial Services will commence using the building on Monday the 21st of October. And that is another day of great celebration when people move in. The furniture is moving in, as you would have seen in the video, and will progressively move in over the next 2 weeks. And that's also another milestone. Each week there is another milestone. The building is coming to life. It's like watching a baby grow up. And they are turning into a beautiful flower that will, for many years to come, transform the lives of people that walk through the doors. And I am so excited that you will be able to come and participate in that celebration in May next year, if not well and truly before. I believe that building will be used 7 days a week by the denomination. It will be used as an opportunity to be able to proclaim the gospel in so many ways. The technology that's going in the building will connect us far and wide, will connect with the world at the push of a button. Well, at least I'm told it'll be a push of the button. But there is much to celebrate in that particular building. It also oozes the ethos, the values, the culture as to who we are. And so I am incredibly proud of what the project team is delivering there at the moment. A great group of people, a great builder in Grindley, and people that this is far beyond just turning up to work on Monday morning. It is about delivering something that is going to be transformative in a whole range of ways. It would not have occurred had we not had the chance to be able to participate in the joint venture on Herring Road with the Toga Group, the delivery of 193 apartments in a 23-level building. And I can tell you today that 181 of those 193 apartments have settled, and we are expecting that project to be fully complete by the end of this year. The proceeds coming from that now means that we are debt-free, that the building will be complete on time and under budget, and there is a corpus of funds that is growing for the Morling Foundation for it to be able to take the denomination and its vision further into the future. We have a great deal to celebrate. And so I would encourage each and every one of you, if you have the chance, just to come and experience what is being delivered at Morling. Yesterday we had a chance to walk around the outside of the building. The turf is down. All of a sudden, the turf in the landscape area, there's going to be areas for people to go and sit in the sun. The sun just oozes into that building right through winter. And it is going to be those type of moments that each of you, I would encourage you to engage and see what that looks like. Across the whole campus, there's a whole range of other things that are occurring. all in a sequential way. The repurposing of the existing buildings for a whole range of other purposes is advancing and will occur in 2020. But above all today, I'm glad to be here with you to be able to celebrate this moment and celebrate what God has done for the college, for the denomination, and the transformation that has occurred, and this is something I wasn't expecting, with the people that have been working on site each day. You know, that God works in mysterious ways. And what I have been seeing and witnessing is how the staff, the students, the consultant team engage with the builders and express who we are and what we are. And that is something, once again, not expected, but something that I think we should celebrate today. So thanks for the chance to be able to come and speak again. There will be more opportunities, I'm sure. I'll just keep turning up because I'm sure there'll be something else that we can talk about in the future. But may the journey continue, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, mate. People like Ian have put years and years into this, but mate, you can become a Baptist, and then you can just keep turning up all the time. Yeah. Thanks, Steve. And the ministry centre. Yep. You move out in October, and that's what we're letting everyone know, and that's what's taking place. And co-location. This is us together in ministry.
Yes, that's right. We leave everything on our desks on Friday night, and we wake up on the Thursday night and Friday morning. They're supposed to be on our desks as the new building. So it's easy. So we just turn up. But yeah, no, look, it is. And next May, our central event, the gathering, will be at the new facility. So we're there on the place that God has provided for us, so that's wonderful.
We'll open the building then?
Yes.
Because it's better to open it when everybody can be there and whatever. We'll have commencement there probably, which will be interesting, but it's best to open it. And remember, it takes about 600 people, and so that'll be a good test for it.
Indeed. Good.
Thanks very much. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Great stuff, isn't it? On time and under budget. How often do you hear that for a building? But that's not the most exciting part. So, we're going to hear about the Consumed campaign. Kelly, and we have our video. Video first.
Consumerism has become the great idol of our age.
Consumerism tells us the good life is found through the ever-expanding acquisition of more.
More money,
more success,
more clothes,
more status,
more food,
more gadgets,
more medication,
more cars,
more holidays, more.
We've become captive to our culture's story about consumption.
Jesus calls us to live a different way.
Consumerism has convinced us that meaning and purpose is found in the ever-increasing consumptions of things, services and experiences.
It convinces us to use our time and money on things that give us fleeting highs, but sap us of lasting contentment.
We keep going back again and again and again without thought of its effect on ourselves,
our relationship with God and others,
or our planet.
We feel paralysed by the number of choices in front of us.
Yet disappointed by all the things we're missing out on. Even if we wanted to get off the consumption merry-go-round, cultural forces continue to herd us back to buy the best,
to be the best,
provide the best,
to buy bigger,
be bigger,
provide bigger.
But Jesus tells us that the good life is found in Him.
A deeper, richer life. A life that is more free and more purposeful.
That the good life is one that is rich in love for God and others. For followers of Jesus, we believe that this way
is the best way to live.
It's a vision for life that the church desperately needs to reclaim.
This is why Consumed was created.
We know there's a problem. Consumed is about joining together to find solutions.
It's about tipping the scales back towards God.
Towards wholeness.
It's about cleaning the lenses through which we view our choices.
It's about finding freedom.
It's about choosing the way of Jesus.
Good midday, morning, almost afternoon. My name's Kelly Crawford, and I'm the Public Engagement Coordinator for the association. The Baptist Association is a partner in this campaign called Consumed. And this campaign really aims to provide a space for Christians to connect and to create solutions to some of the problems of consumerism. Solutions that help us to realign our choices with God's story. It's a partnership between Seed, Baptist Financial Services, Baptist Care New South Wales and ACT, Baptist World Aid, Christian Super, and City and Field, which is the Christian arm of McCrindle. And there are some really great resources available for you as part of this campaign. And one of them that just got released this past week was a report and research done by McCrindle on the state of consumerism in Australia. And not only does this research look at consumerism in Australia in general, but it looks at consumerism amongst Christians who attend church regularly. And it's probably no surprise to you that we have a problem in society and we have a problem in the church with consumerism. Only 58% of regular churchgoers associate the good life with living out their faith. And, we seem to have just as much trouble in the church translating our beliefs about consumerism into behavioral change. So will you join us in trying to help tackle this issue? And also with trying to help ground people's consumption choices and their idea of the good life as one that is found in Jesus Christ. So what can you do? There are a number of things you can do. If you know of interested individuals in your church, you can tell them about this campaign. You can check out the website, which is consumed.org.au, and the research. It's all free. The report, the infographics, a lot of different posts and resources for you are all free, although they will ask you for your email address so we can keep track if people are actually using the materials. You can download the church pack. There are heaps of resources there for you, for your church. There's a preaching guide, there's this video and talking points and PowerPoint slides, a kids resource, and a Bible study, just lots of stuff for you there. And you can host a creative conversation. So there's a facilitator's guide available for this as well on the website. And that's just a fun and creative time for you to explore a question with a group of people, an idea or a problem that's been posed. You then gather those ideas and feed them onto the online crowdsourcing platform that's provided. Those will then be voted on, and the best ideas will go through a design lab process. So what we're looking for really is tangible solutions, not just naming the problem, but coming up with solutions to it. And so at Consumed, we really suggest, rather than taking this all on yourself as a pastor or church leader, that you nominate 2 or 3 interested people in your church who can keep up with the campaign and then feed ideas for participation back into the life of the church. And I just want to say that an email did go out earlier this week, and then we had a significant problem with MailChimp, and so all of those links are not working, so my apologies. If you go to consume.org.au, you will find all the information that was sent in that email. And if you do have any questions, you can always feel free to get in touch with me. Thanks.
Yeah, that looks excellent. Thank you, Kelly. From one big picture issue to more big picture stuff, Steve's going to give us an update on vision and way forward. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Jamie. And yes, it is one of the really exciting things of the last few years has been to see the way we have reimagined the way we engage public issues, the way we resource one another in public issues, and Kelly's been key to that, and John Beckett, the chair of our public engagement group, and all of those who've been part of that area. I hope that you've had an opportunity to engage with some of those things. There was, of course, the No Place for Violence Here, domestic violence campaign, that again, partnerships between ourselves as an association, Baptist Care. So this sense of the different arms of who we are as a movement working together has been really gratifying to see over the last few years. That's probably a good segue into the fact that one of the aspects of the heart of the work that we did 6 years ago, as we, as an association, committed together to a new day, to a new vision, to a new goal, to a new sense of where God was leading us, that things were going to be different. And those of you who were here 6 years ago might remember we committed to 4 vision pictures, 4 places that we wanted to see us head into the future. And we redefined who we were in terms of our purpose. And we committed to an audacious goal of 1,000 healthy churches, that we might see flourishing and transforming communities of faith across our state and ACT, 3 times as many of them at the end of a generation at the beginning. Stuff that we couldn't and still can't do in our own strength. That was 6 years ago. We've broken that down since then into strategic sort of plans in frames of 3 years. The first one came to you in 2014, from 2014 to 2016. The second one was from 2017 to this year. And so we're looking now and asking ourselves the question, what next, Lord? What is the next season for us? What are the big rocks? What are the priorities for us as we move ahead? As part of our assembly in the new premises on the campus at Macquarie Park next year, we'll be bringing the fullest sense of that, and affirming that and asking you to affirm that and feeding back on that going forward for the next phase from 2020 to 2022. But I just want to give you a hint or some little windows into that just before we go to lunch today. Not only that, but also to reflect back on the last few years and see how God has been at work in us and among us. You may recall that at the beginning of this process, what we affirmed together in 2017 was 6 key priorities, 6 key areas in which we wanted to develop as a movement and encourage one another in. And 3 of them we classed as sort of foundational priorities, the foundational priority of prayer, and it was great to spend time in that space again this morning, of partnership, how we work more closely together, and disciple making, the bedrock of our growth as a people of God, that we might continue to be conformed to the likeness of Jesus and encourage others to do the same. Those underlying priorities and how we encourage that within our movement. And then sitting on top of that, the outworking of that, if you like, continuing to press into our vision to pioneer new churches and to work in the health of our churches, to see new leaders grown and to be engaging in the wider world in which we live. That's what we set ourselves. Here's just a few snapshots of what that's looked like. In terms of the prayer priority, for example, you might remember that a year and a half ago we agreed on a pretty historic resolution together that we might commit consistently to be praying for revival and renewal among us. And we've done that again this morning. And there have been campaigns that have encouraged us in our churches to do that. Many of us have seen and used the Pray at 11:02 resources, and will continue to find ways of encouraging us in that whole area of prayer. The role that Carolyn's played in drawing this to our attention as our prayer coordinator continues. The closer partnership and facilitation of the mutual relationships that we have. There's a living example of it just a few minutes ago as we look to co-locate different parts of our movement together in ways that will allow further and more deep partnership. But it's also much more than simply what happens on one particular site. One of the really exciting things about the last 3 years has been to see regional leaderships and regional churches, clusters of churches gather together and see a broader vision for their region in new ways. And I think of some of our regions, both within Sydney, on the southern side of our city, in the region of transformed southern Sydney, and also in some of our out of Sydney areas, our Riverina, and other places where we've seen regional leadership emerge in new ways and new levels of collaboration. That's been great. And disciple-making culture. We're still on the journey with this one, I think it's fair to say. We recognise that the intentionality that in terms of a culture piece is there in some of our churches, but we'd love it to be there more potently across all of our churches, and we need to continue to work in that area. Understanding what it is, articulating that well, encouraging and training our leaders to be able to develop that sort of a culture, and promoting good resources. They're going to be focuses for us in the few years that lie ahead. Our fourth priority around leader development. We've seen leadership academies that some of our regions have done for the first time, just for people across our churches, giving them new skills in how to lead in small groups or in governance or in other areas of church life. That's happened in a couple of our regions this year and last year and the year before. One example of how we're seeing that. It's been mentioned we have had a record number of people applying for accreditation this year, almost double that of the years that have gone before, and that's really gratifying to see. We need to keep encouraging that as well. There's more work to do there. It's unfinished business in terms of the culture piece among us, but we recognise that God is at work. The fifth one around supporting the revitalisation of churches and helping churches pioneer new churches. We've already noted the 30 new churches that have been planted over the last 3 years among us, and also the really great work that's being done in a number of our churches that have multiplied services or campuses in some ways, which is starting to happen more regularly. The opportunity to get beside churches who are needing help in areas of church health is something that we have to just be honest and say is the demand is outstripping the capacity. And so one of the things that we're doing about that is the multiplying of consultancy ministry, and Ian Altman, who heads our church health and vitalisation team, is about 2 years into a 5-year strategy to just upskill people who are able to assist and walk beside churches in terms of bringing them to places of further health, and also work proactively in terms of vision and other things as well. If we look over the last 5 years, here are the stats. The number of our churches, new churches and church plants, increases by about 2% a year. About 1% of our churches close a year. So we've got net growth in the numbers of our churches over the last 5 or 6 years or so, on average, about 1%. That's okay. It's not going to get us to 1,000 healthy churches in 2050. That's all right. So we need to keep working through how are we going to see God continue to work in new ways as we push into that. But that's where things have been over the last few years. And sixthly, to continue to grow our public presence and engagement, and we've talked a little bit about that already. Where to from here? As we looked and we've sort of started to take feedback from regional leaders and assembly councils, thought this through, and those who are out working with our churches, I guess we've asked ourselves the question, what's the best framework in which we can articulate what the journey of the next 3 years might look like for us? We know some of the barriers and some of the challenges that we had 6 years ago are actually not there in the same way that they were 6 years ago. There are other challenges that are right in front of our face and that are very clear for us. And so what does it look like over the next 3 years to push into them? Part of it too was recognising that we have a purpose. We have 5 core values, we have 4 vision pictures, and we had 6 priorities. So it was all there's lots of stuff there. How can we simplify that even more? Knowing that the history that we came from, there was so much that we wanted to do, and there's so much progress being made, but how can we continue to refine and hone, simplify the way we communicate where we're headed? So for the next season, the suggestion is, and we're framing sort of the strat planning for the next season in this framework, that rather than have 6 separate priorities, we might actually articulate the priorities that we have under each of our 4 vision pictures. We have 4 clear things that we've committed to into the future. That we might see transforming life-giving communities where disciples are made and where lives are changed and where health is. That's our community picture. It's about the type of communities of faith we'd love to see. We've got a vision picture about leadership, so saying leadership raised up more than we need so that we can be impacting our wider community, but also the fact that if we're going to see healthy churches, growing churches, and 1,000 of them, we need many more leaders than we have currently got. So how do we develop leadership culture? That's the second picture, seeing that picture of leadership move forward among us. The third one is the picture of mission, and what does it mean for us to be on mission together? What does it mean for us over the next 3 years to particularly push into that? and then the justice or the compassion or the impacting our wider society and world in the name of Christ. So those are our 4 vision pictures, and the suggestion is, or the intent is, that we will bring to you at our next assembly the priorities or the draft priorities for the next 3 years in that framework, so that when we speak about where we're headed in terms of our priorities, we're connecting them very, very closely to the vision that God has given us. So what are just a few of the big rocks, if you like, some of the emerging priorities for us over these next 3 years? And we're continuing to wrestle with this, and you'll get further material either late this year or early next year to be able to comment on as well before we get to our assembly in May. For example, in the area of our community, our transforming and healthy community transforming healthy communities. We recognise that in our history, we have probably seen, and I guess I'm just using very colloquial terms here, a generational slump in the intentionality of our disciple making. And the question we want to wrestle with is, what do we do about that? And that's not to say that there's not great work being done in that area, but in terms of a culture piece for us, is this where we want to be? And there's a sense that, and this is not us uniquely. I mean, this is if you read blogs, you read a lot of what people are wrestling with in terms of mission. Is how do we actually do disciple making well? And because the making disciples, of course, is the basis of how we develop leaders, how people grow in maturity and are able to work and go out in mission as well. So that needs to be a key priority for us. We've got some frameworks in place, work that's been done on how we might encourage that. What's the role of us as a movement, at a movement association level, to resource and encourage the local church in that. That has to be a big rock for the next few years. Talking about health too, clarifying what we mean by a healthy church and multiplying our resources for meaningful engagement with the churches are wanting to go that journey. And I've talked about that already in terms of the demand that there is for that. That needs to be something that we give ourselves to in the next 3 years as well. The second picture is around leadership. A movement raising and empowering kingdom-focused leaders. And while, again, we notice that across our churches, there are great examples of churches that have developed leader development culture. That this is not yet something that is a hallmark of who we are as a movement altogether. In fact, for many, I know it is for many pastors and leaders, that the feedback that you get, it might be around the sermon, it might be around who you visited or didn't visit, but very rarely will someone say to you, I'm really encouraged to see you developing leaders around you. Why is that? And what can we do to be encouraging one another to value the emergence of leaders and to connect in with the resources that are available to us and to see that leaders develop at a greater rate than they are currently happening. So that needs to be a key thing for us in the years that lie ahead. Part of that too is a recognition that this works really powerfully when churches who are connected together work together, not simply across our whole state, but in regions. And where we've seen regional leadership teams come together and run events and training and encouragement for the leaders in their regions. We see it happening in Western Sydney, in Southern Sydney, in the Riverina, in other areas as well. We want to keep encouraging that because that's a really potent way to see more workers and leaders raised for the kingdom. The third picture, some of the things that we probably need to look at into the future are further enhancing our commitment to evangelism and church planting. We want to, as we look back on the last decade or so, we recognise that God has put in our paths just some wonderful leaders and people who have connected with us on our journey or who've been raised up in our churches and have gone to do new things. in some ways, it would be fair to say we have been the beneficiaries of that without doing the hard work, the generational work of what does it mean to form a whole generation that sees mission as imperative and that wants to take their place in the health and life of our churches and in pioneering work. And so we need to take formational approaches here more and more, as well as picking the fruit, if you like, of leaders who God raises up and brings into our midst. So we want to see that very strategic, I guess, but subtle, if you like, shift take place in the years that lie ahead. Part of our discussion around affiliation is that we want to be a mission-shaped movement of God, united in what it means to be together to support one another. Even to things like some of the resources that we are working with churches and giving churches around safe practices. The Safe Church Health Check, that will be a project of the next 12 or so months, where we're providing the mechanism whereby churches can fulfil their obligations to the wider community and under the law in ways that are not overwhelming for them, but bring us up to where we need to be in ways that positively impact our witness. That's one of the big rocks for the next couple of years as well. Finally, in justice and compassion, just one of the key areas was just been already spoken about in terms of consumed. We're also aware that this next term of Parliament will be discussion around an Indigenous voice to Parliament, what that looks like. Our sense is that those sorts of issues around our Indigenous brothers and sisters, reconciliation, how we do that, are going to be on the agenda, and we want to play our part in that as well. We also know that from time to time, and we're in the midst of it now, there are ways in which we need to speak into wider society, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of others who can't speak up for themselves. That's part of what Converge is about, which Carolyn mentioned to us at the beginning of the day-to-day. But we've been pretty active in advocacy spaces and speaking with government, for example, around the freedom of religion area at the moment, which is very, very active, and others areas have come up and continue to come up. The reproductive health bill that's in the midst of being debated in our upper house. So we've been active in that space as well. Those things will take attention from time to time. But what does it mean for us to continue to bring gospel values to the public square, and more importantly, focus in such a way that we can resource people in local churches, your church, to understand local community issues and respond in appropriate ways. That's part of what our public engagement group under Kelly is doing. So as we reflect on this and continue to move into the future, can I ask you to be prayerful, continue to be prayerful, that we might discern together what are the most significant things that we can do together to support one another to see the gospel advance. I come back again to the commitment we made in 2017 that we might together pray for renewal and revival in our midst and in the state and territory that God has given us a particular heart for and placed us in the midst of. We are not here by accident. God has called us to play our role in the fulfillment of His kingdom and the coming of His kingdom among us. Will we do that? Will we continue to raise our sights to that? And we want to play our part in the best way we can for that. So there will be more information coming to you in the times that lie ahead, but we've probably got time for a couple of questions if people have them, Jamie, and then we might close in prayer and start to go and grab some lunch.
All right, questions for Steve and the vision update. Any questions? Just put your hand up and someone will run to you or walk to you. Yeah.
Ian Dean, Castle Baptist. One of the questions I get asked quite often from congregation members is, where is the voice of the Baptist Union in issues like this abortion bill that's going through? What are the Baptist Union, are they saying anything? Are they making any public media statements? If so, what are they saying? And my standard answer is, I don't know. So is there some way that that communication can be given out so that when I do get asked those questions, we can answer them?
Yes. Well, Actually, we did communicate about that. There are emails went out to our churches about, there's a statement that went out to our churches. There was also links in that statement to our website where was the documentation that we've provided and submitted to our Parliament to two particular ways. There was a parliamentary upper house inquiry about the bill, in which we had 4 days to submit. It was completely unrealistic. Nevertheless, we did submit a submission to that, and you can find that by going to that page on our website, click through the documents there. We also wrote to the Premier. That letter's on the website. You can go to that and click to it, it's there. So if you've missed out on that info, please ring the office and we can send the links out to you again so that you can know that is what we're doing. We would still encourage you. We realise the complexity of that whole particular piece of legislation. It is before the upper house. It'll come back for debate in the middle of this month. So it's really, if you want to connect with our parliamentarians, the best people to connect with our upper house parliamentarians now where it's being debated and will likely be decided before the end of this month. Yep.
Right, any further questions before we pray? All righty, well, it's been great to have our remote locations with Wagga, Dubbo and Lismore, and John Wilson from Lismore is going to lead us in prayer. You there, John?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Lead us in prayer.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity and commitment to connect us with you for this assembly. Let's join together in prayer. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to be able to connect together in this way and to seek your will and your direction and purpose for us. We just pray that as we continue to commit to you and to each other, that you will continue to guide us by your Spirit and that we will be in line with your purposes and your direction for us. Continue to lead us as we continue to meet together, that you will be glorified and honoured in all that we do. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, John. Thank you to everyone, whether they be in those locations or here, for joining us and participating as we seek the Lord together and discern where he's leading us. Lunch is served now, and then at 2 o'clock here is the accreditation service. Thank you, everyone.
See